No Danavian god was allowed to touch this star. And then they decided that SagaRA stood above the world. His light was holy and fast. But the Danavas were full of hatred and they could not realize it. The Danavs had developed various military technologies, for example, pistols that evaporated water, various kinds of gravitational wave weapons, ammunition that allowed them to bend space in any direction. They did not use the weapons that other nations used. They weren't afraid of us, but because they were fiercer than us, we couldn't resist them. We could not only defeat them, but even understand them. They were stronger than us, but at the same time they were more cunning. We didn't even think it was possible. The Danavas adapted to any conditions. They had a lot of things that scared us, and the more they adapted, the more violent and deadly they became. But we couldn't fight them because we didn't understand anything about their weapons. Their belongings defied investigation, and our knowledge of magic was already too ancient. We couldn't even affect them with our weapons. Therefore, all we could do was avoid the fight, gradually bringing their victory over us closer. As soon as they managed to find any vulnerabilities, they immediately struck. They always knew where to hit, and there was nothing we could do. And this caused us real despair. It was stronger than fear, even though we knew that this fear would pass sooner or later. But there was nothing we could do about it. We could only hope for the Almighty. We prayed to Him that He would not leave us. Radagast SagaRA came to us and listened to our prayers. He brought us the last gifts. With their help, we tried to master many powers. He brought us the knowledge of how to create new protective clothing, explaining that it is necessary to build a powerful weapon, and how to learn before using it. Under the leadership of Radagast, the SLAVS gained new strength and fought the impure Danavas, driving them back into the depths of the water. It so happened that the 12 sons of the Danavian emperor surrounded Radagast and erected a dome of power over him, to crush him and his army. Janai Garislav, filled with righteous anger, went to help Radagast, and with him went the entire 60,000 army of the sons of the fiery ruler SagaR. The combined army of all the Danavian provinces faced the army of the divine princes, under the control of each of whom there were more than 60 brave warriors. The total number of Slavic warriors under Janka Garislav's hand was equal to the number of years in the share. This is about 4,500,000 warriors, and they faced the 20 million army of the 12 Danavian princes. The battle was terrible. No more than 1,000 of the Slavic warriors survived. All the divine princes survived, the sons of the prince of the burnt offering fire. Janai also retained his personal guard consisting of detachments, under the command of Ranak, Shuranj, Avardalt, Kalhavast, Daksonavist, Istavavan, Dadvax, Kalakripa, Wathusan, Urant, Daset, Kailantai, Kavas, Asuslav and Shilataya, as well as Sarvdath, Vahanka, Sventivlast, Alquinth, Perislav, Vulcan, Rathaverda, Radanaya, Alvasana and Gaisanatha, the surviving heroes from the Order of the Amber Tear, and Kalkakartai, Sanadvar, Darbakai, Saibar, Varthan, Sinwald, Isveld, Deveda, the heroes of the co-enchanters. But the Danava army was destroyed to the ground. Radagast and his army were saved, and the ruler of the Danavs hated the SLAVS even more for this. He decided that SagaR's son would never be able to defeat him, and decided to destroy the people of the SLAVS. At the top of the hill, he built a huge castle, which was supposed to be a death trap for the remaining warriors of Radagast, and he made a plan. The castle had 23 drawbridges and 3 main gears. There were archers on the central towers, who had combat emitters ready. The last right-hand bridge was supposed to be destroyed with just one volley of archers, although it seemed that the shooters could be approached from a distance. But if the enemy wants to win, he will go head-on. And from all other sides in this castle there were war machines with archers on board. But then everything happened completely differently. One of the towers of the fortress exploded, but that was just the beginning. When the dust cleared, all 3 cars were simply melted into a ball that soared half a mile high. They say that the great sorcerer Radner also died. He managed to do his job. However, there is little written evidence of this. The entire castle collapsed to the bottom, and the ancient Radner was buried under its rubble. It is even said that the Tower of Radner has preserved intact magical statues that have such power that they can create a dense fog around themselves. These statues suppress the will to win. People who have seen them claim that they can do nothing with fear and sometimes run away from the castle in search of salvation. However, others, who also manage to visit the castle, say that they spew flames, throw thunder and lightning, and strange and incomprehensible phenomena occur between the statues. When they reappear, people will believe in witchcraft no less than before. Radagast the sorcerer was a very powerful man. He became famous for his rich, magical knowledge and had the walls of the castle covered with images of demons and birds. And above the gate, build a tower with figures, on top of which there will be an image of a grinning three-headed griffin. As on ancient amulets, this is a sign of Radagast's power over the world of the living and the dead. And these towers will be destroyed until the evil and dark spells surrounding the world of the living finally prevail. Until the same terrible times, the castle of horror will not rise up and disturb the world of the living. He is destroyed by the sacred power of Janha. Janai Jaroslav entered meditation, concentrated the power of Urasti, and with its power burned not only the equipment that the Danavas threatened Radagast's army, but also the one that supported the dome of their underwater city. Previously, the main city of the Danavas was one of the Hyperborean tunnels, designed for intercontinental communication and as a giant bunker in the event of an interplanetary war. Later, this tunnel was occupied by the Danavas. This is one of the largest caves, which is located under the Atlantic Ocean, at the junction of two lithospheric plates, between which there is a huge natural cave, which was originally finalized by the Arevici and Dravidians, and later by the Danavas. To the east of this tunnel, known since ancient times as Danagrad, in the area of the current North Sea, was the Danavian city of Idoravaz, the dome of which began to partially collapse even earlier, which forced the Danavas to rise to land. But now the blow of Janha Jaroslav caused irreparable damage to Idoravaz, almost destroying it, and the damage to Danagrad was also enormous. The population of Danavia eventually left this space, out of fear, but some Danavas were forced to leave many of their belongings and possessions there. This valley is one of the reference points in the past of the Danavian civilization, and today it is a burial ground. As you know, the Danavian civilization was based on a special interaction of two structures, two special cosmic cultures. The first of them, which has existed since time immemorial, was the Sandug, or semi-mythical Kathantaka. The vastness of this culture was so great that it is called the last of the first, and its literature itself dates back to the time of the Tartary in the Upper Era. Sandug founded the cult of the most archaic of the three original deities of the Danavian civilization, Ethrigu, who acted as an ally of the rulers, and led the troops in ancient times. The second of the cosmic cultures, the oldest and most widespread, was the Tekwaka culture. We don't know anything about the third civilization. There are only two myths associated with it, about the sacred mountains Aboch, and about the 46 heavenly thrones mentioned in the speeches of Radagast. There are such words in Radagast's speeches. On Mount Aboch, a majestic and powerful empire has quietly existed for 300,000 years, led by these forces, on this highest hill from one end of the world to the other. There is nothing more about this civilization. The speeches of Radagast also mentions 46 heavenly thrones. Some ancient scientists were inclined to consider them the most ancient reality of the Earth's noosphere. When a catastrophe occurred during an ancient military conflict, then the descendants of Perla, Ostrovia, Saisana, Sinistella, and Ratai fought for power over the Earth, and for the very right of existence and identity. They fought among themselves and with the inhabitants of the moons. And, as always happens in such cases, the inhabitants of the moon alone were not strong enough to maintain power over the Earth. They decided to take it for themselves, and a civil war began between them, a very serious one, since it was not in the customs of the moon to start a war with Russia even because of the minor planets, and the Lord of the Moon of the Veil himself was forced to help his brother, the Prince of Sasan. This went on for quite a long time, but eventually disaster struck. The Moon Kings fled beyond the solar system. They did this aboard one huge mobile combat station, a space supership of antiquity, which, among other things, was a warship of the Prince of Darkness fleet. The Kaysans were very fond of flying to the moon of Fatu, and the inhabitants of Fatu were friendly with Kaysana and Rataya, and a quarrel was brewing between Sasan and the lunar kings of the moon Shura over the division of orbital stations. The alliance of Ratai, Fada and Saisana fought against the alliance of Perla, Ostrovia, and Sinistella. Later, Kaysana and Sinistella formed an alliance to betray others and divide the world among themselves. Carpet bombing destroyed cities and forests. The Sinistecs and the Veil clashed in a deadly battle, during which they were mutually destroyed. The Synastecs used ancient warheads to vaporize most of the Vale, and the Prince of the Vale sent his warheads at the last moment to the main islands of the Synastecs. It was a terrible disaster for all Earthlings, most of whom could not survive it. The survivors also often died from unknown diseases released in this war. The descendants of the ruling dynasties of other powers also constantly feuded, and internecine strife broke out between them, which often ended in fratricidal wars. After each new war, there were fewer inhabitants in the world, and more new disasters occurred. In the end, the old world finally fell apart, and fragments of the moon veil beat the surface of the earth. An amazing wilderness has appeared on it. It was the end of all that was left of the ancients' powers. All that the dead could not survive at the time went to the descendants of the new dynasties. They settled all over the earth, but they say that in some places ancient chronicles, books, statues and much more have been preserved. Those who live there can help people. You just need to know the history well, otherwise you can remain just a disembodied shadow in an ever-changing world. Where the wind stirs the leaves, anything can be hidden, and it can kill, or bestow ancient knowledge. And where the wind blows into the distance of unknown roads, anything that exists in the world can appear. Sometimes traces of ancient eras come to life, and then it's better not to wander there. The sages say that many rulers fled from the moon, unwilling to obey what their servants brought to people, but this does not make it clearer why the gods did not prevent that horror. All this was centuries before SagaR's appearance.